I found my name on a secret trafficking roster, then caught my boss boarding a private jet with his partner in crime. He smirked and said, "You'll never catch me." 5 minutes later, he was in handcuffs. I swear to you, the moment I saw that tiny dented bracelet hanging off River's wrist, something inside me snapped. Not the kind of snap that makes you scream or throw things. Number? It was the quiet kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that makes your stomach drop like you've just missed the last step on a staircase. And maybe I should have said something right then and there. But you see, when you've grown up knowing exactly how it feels to have nothing, no safety, no comfort, no one, you learn to swallow your gut feelings because survival always came first. Let me back up. My name's Janelle. I'm 29, and for most of my life, I lived in the kind of neighborhoods people only see in crime documentaries. Dad was a ghost. Mom was a fighter, but life hit her harder than she could ever swing back. I clawed my way out of all that, earned a degree no one thought I'd survive to get, and now I manage a community program for underprivileged youth right here in Chicago. And then I met him, River Hale. A man who looked like he belonged on some indie music festival poster. Sun-kissed skin, tattooed arms full of deep quotes in foreign languages, and a crooked smile that made you forget your own name. But it wasn't just the looks. God, he knew how to say the right things. He'd strum his beat-up guitar in the community center courtyard, singing songs about saving lost kids and broken homes. Parents trusted him. Kids adored him. And me? I fell hard. For a whole year, he was perfect. Always showing up with donations for the kids. Hosting fundraisers, cooking Sunday meals at the soup kitchen. He'd brush my hair behind my ear and say, "You're the only good thing this broken world's given me, Janelle." But then, that Tuesday afternoon, I got home early from work and found him in our tiny kitchen. He was stirring a pot of overcooked spaghetti, humming like nothing was wrong. And that's when I saw it. The bracelet. It was cheap, bent out of shape. The kind of thing you'd win out of a quarter machine, or maybe something a child would make at a sheltercraft table. Tiny metal letters dangled off it, spelling the word hope. But it wasn't just the bracelet. It was the scent. A sugary, artificial berry scent clung to it. Sticky sweet and cheap, like the body sprays they sell to tween girls at dollar stores. My mind was racing, but I played it cool. "That's new," I said, pointing at his wrist. He laughed. Too loud, too fast. "Oh, this? One of the kids from the Sunrise Shelter gave it to me." "Cute, huh?" Sunrise Shelter? I ran every community program within 5 miles. That wasn't a name I'd ever heard before. "You didn't mention a new shelter," I said carefully. River shrugged, stirring the spaghetti like it was the most normal thing in the world. "It's not official yet. Just some pop-up thing I'm helping with. You know, keeping kids off the streets." My gut told me he was lying, but I'd learned to ignore that gut voice for so long it felt like a reflex to swallow the doubt. For a few days, I tried to forget it, but small things kept piling up. He started locking his phone. He'd take late-night walks he never used to take before. And when I checked his Google Maps history, something I'd never done before because I trusted him, there were addresses way out in the industrial zones. Then came Friday. He told me he was heading out of town for a weekend retreat with some new sponsors for his charity work. I wanted to believe him. God knows I tried to believe him. But that night, as I sat alone on our worn-down couch, my chest tight with something I couldn't quite name, a notification popped up on his laptop. Autosync from his Google Photos account. And that's when the world stopped. Hundreds, no, thousands of photos. At first, it didn't seem suspicious. Pictures of community events, group photos with kids. But then, as I kept scrolling, the smiles faded. The lighting in the photos turned dim. The backgrounds shifted from brightly lit centers to dingy basements and empty storage rooms. And the worst part? The kids, mostly little girls, weren't smiling anymore. Some had their faces turned away. Some looked scared. And one damn photo had a girl sitting alone on a stained mattress, her knees hugged to her chest. A broken plastic tiara perched crookedly on her tangled hair. My vision blurred. I felt like I was drowning in my own living room. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. By dawn, I had made my decision. If River was hiding something, I was going to find out. He wasn't expecting me to show up at the warehouse on West Archer Avenue, but he didn't know I had tracked the GPS ping from one of those weird addresses. I parked my car a block away and made my way through the alleys until I found the place. It was exactly like the backgrounds in those photos. Cracked windows, rusted outdoors, and an eerie silence that pressed against my skin like a warning. And then, through a grimy side window, I saw him. River, with a camera in his hand. and a group of little girls sitting on folding chairs wearing identical oversized t-shirts that read, Sunrise Angels. His voice filtered through the open window. All right, girls, remember what we practiced? Big smiles now. I felt my stomach lurch, and just before I could pull out my phone to call the cops, a hand clamped down over my mouth from behind. Everything went black. When I came to, my head felt like it had been split open from the inside out. My mouth was dry, lips cracked, and there was this sharp metallic taste that made me gag the second I tried to swallow. I couldn't see a thing. Panic hit me first, like a freight train barreling through my chest. My wrists were tied, something rough and plastic cutting into my skin. I kicked out instinctively, my ankle catching on something hard. And then it all came flooding back. The bracelet, the photos, the warehouse, River. I tried to breathe through the rising terror, but the air was thick with damp mold and something worse. Sweet, rotten, familiar. That sickeningly sweet berry scent. I squeezed my eyes shut even though I was already blindfolded. Please, God, tell me I'm wrong about this. Footsteps echoed through the room. Slow, unhurried. Janelle. His voice. Calm. Casual. Like we were back in our tiny apartment and he'd just found me dozing off on the couch. You weren't supposed to see this, he murmured, like I'd simply walked in on a surprise birthday party. You ruined everything, you know that? My heart pounded so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I turned my head toward his voice. River, what is this? What the hell are you doing? He let out a soft, almost regretful sigh. I was really hoping you wouldn't be this nosy. There was movement again. Something cold touched my wrist. A blade? I flinched hard, but then the bindings loosened. My blindfold was ripped off so suddenly the dim light stabbed at my eyes. It took me a few seconds to adjust. And when I did, I wish I hadn't. We were still in the warehouse. But this wasn't some rundown storage space. This was a set. Ring lights stood in the corners. A backdrop of faded pink curtains hung unevenly along the walls. There were props scattered everywhere. Plastic crowns, feather boas, tiny pairs of glittered shoes. And in the corner I saw them. 4 little girls huddled together behind a stack of storage crates. Their eyes wide, faces pale. My breath hitched. Let them go, I rasped, my voice hoarse from whatever he'd done to knock me out. River crouched beside me, his face inches from mine. That same face I used to love. They're fine. He whispered like we were sharing some dirty secret. They're the lucky ones, Janelle. You have no idea what kind of homes they come from. You think you're the hero, don't you? But you don't understand the bigger picture. I felt something hot burn its way up my throat. Disgust, rage, helplessness. You're sick, I spat. He smiled then, that slow, deliberate smirk that made my stomach turn. No, Janelle, I'm a realist. He stood and began pacing slowly. You think the world's gonna save them? The system? Social workers who clock out at 5 and forget their names by Monday? My fists clenched so hard my nails bit into my palms. They deserve better, I managed through gritted teeth. And I'm giving them better, he shot back, spinning on his heel. You don't get it, you never did, but it's too late now. He pulled his phone from his pocket, pressed a button, and I heard the click of a door unlocking somewhere nearby. Another figure appeared at the doorway. A woman this time. Tall, immaculately dressed, not a single hair out of place. And I recognized her instantly. Melinda Grant, the celebrated philanthropist, the woman whose face was plastered on billboards downtown with slogans about saving the future, one child at a time. I almost choked. She walked toward me like she was inspecting a piece of art she wasn't quite sure she liked. So this is the one who's been snooping, she said, her voice cold and clipped. You're just as weak as I expected. River stepped closer to her, standing at her side like a dutiful son. And then it hit me. Melinda wasn't just some wealthy donor. She was the one running this. All of it. The shelters, the fake charities, the entire damn operation. My stomach twisted into knots. Melinda knelt in front of me. Here's how this works, dear. You walk out of here and forget everything you saw. You delete those photos, you go back to your pathetic little community center, and you play dumb. Or, she glanced back at the girls cowering behind the crates. Or we make sure you disappear, just like the others who asked too many questions. My heart nearly stopped. Others? How many others? I looked over at those terrified girls, their tiny shoulders shaking. And I knew I wasn't leaving without them. But before I could even think of a plan, I heard it. A loud bang. The warehouse door crashed open and a flood of blinding lights poured in. Chicago PD, hands in the air. Chaos erupted. Melinda's calm mask cracked, her face twisting in fury as she screamed for someone to grab me. River lunged, but I kicked out hard, catching him right in the knee. He stumbled back, cursing. Cops swarmed the place, shouting orders. And then, over the commotion, I heard the faintest, most heartbreaking whisper. Miss Janelle, please don't leave us. My head snapped toward the crates. It was the smallest girl. Her eyes locked onto mine, tears streaking her dirty cheeks. Before I could move, a gunshot rang out, and everything went black again. When the gunshot rang out, my whole body locked up. My ears rang so loud I couldn't hear anything else for a second. And in that frozen, horrible moment, I was sure, absolutely sure, someone had just died. My heart slammed against my ribs as I scrambled to my feet. My legs were weak, trembling so bad I nearly collapsed again. I couldn't tell if I'd been shot or if the sound had just broken me from the inside out. But then, through the blinding lights and chaos, I saw them. The girls. They were huddled behind the crates, still alive, eyes wide with terror. The youngest one, Faith, I'd later learn her name, was clutching the broken bracelet I'd seen on River's wrist. Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled, but there was no time to fall apart. I scanned the room frantically. Melinda was gone, disappeared like smoke. River was on the ground a few feet away, clutching his shoulder, blood soaking through his shirt. A police officer stood over him, weapon raised, eyes cold and unblinking. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. It was the door, wide open. And beyond it, a shadow slipping into the night. Melinda Grant was escaping. I spun toward the nearest officer, my voice hoarse and cracking. She's getting away. That woman, Melinda Grant. She's the one running this. The officer barked something into his radio, but I didn't wait. I ran, barefoot, barely able to breathe. Every step on the cold concrete felt like knives slicing into my feet, but none of it mattered. I wasn't letting her disappear into the night after everything she'd done, not after what I'd seen. I burst out into the alley, lungs burning. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I kept running. Ahead, I caught sight of her, heels clicking against the pavement as she made her way toward a sleek black SUV waiting at the curb. She turned, her face illuminated by the faint orange glow of a street lamp. And in that second, our eyes locked. I expected panic, fear. But instead, she smiled. She smiled, like she knew something I didn't. She pulled out a phone, held it up briefly, and I could see the screen glowing. Then she got into the SUV, and it sped off before I could even get close. I stood there, gasping for air, helpless. And then, my phone buzzed, a blocked number. I hesitated for a split second before answering, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. The voice on the other end wasn't Melinda's. It wasn't River's either. It was a little girl, software frightened, barely above a whisper. Miss Janelle. He said if you don't stop looking, he'll hurt my sister. My blood went ice cold. Who is this? Sweetheart, what's your name? Where are you? A shaky breath. Then the line went dead. I stood there staring at my phone, my heart pounding so loud I couldn't even hear the sirens anymore. This wasn't over. Not even close. And that's when the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Melinda wasn't running away. She was moving on to the next location, the next shipment. The girls at the warehouse were just the tip of the iceberg. My legs gave out, and I collapsed against the wall, my mind racing in every direction at once. This operation, it was bigger, more organized, and they were already one step ahead. My phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. This time it was a man's voice. Low, calm, too calm. You've seen enough, Miss Janelle. If you care about those little girls, you'll forget what you think you know. And then the line cut. No threats, no screaming, just quiet, controlled confidence. I sat there for God knows how long before the police found me. My mind wouldn't stop replaying that child's voice, her fear, the phone call. Back at the station, I tried to explain everything, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were too late. That while we sat here filling out paperwork and making statements, something far worse was happening somewhere else. And then, right before dawn, a call came through to the lead detective. They'd found another abandoned warehouse. And inside, a list. Not just any list, a transport schedule, with my name at the very top. I sat there in that cold, gray interrogation room staring at the schedule they'd found. My name, bolded, right at the top of a list that chilled me to my core. It wasn't just a transport schedule, it was a roster. And not only for children, but for women. Targets, future assets, as they disgustingly labeled it. And I was their next high-value acquisition. The detective's face was pale as he read through the rest of the files. But me? I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done being the victim. If they thought they could play God with people's lives, I'd show them what it felt like when their perfect little empire started to burn. By that evening, while the police were still trying to piece together the operation, I made a call they didn't know about. To a name scribbled at the very bottom of that list. A man labeled only as Supplier Number 14, Asset Logistics, Defunct. I'd seen that name before. In a community report I filed 2 years ago about a corrupt foster care liaison who mysteriously disappeared before he could be investigated. Martin Ellis. And the thing about men like Martin, they always think they're untouchable, until someone dangles their freedom in front of their face. I found him holed up in a rundown motel on the outskirts of Joliet. Broken blinds, rusted door frame, and the kind of paranoia that makes a man check his window every 5 minutes. He didn't recognize me at first, but when I sat down in that cheap plastic chair across from him and laid out the full schedule the cops had found, he turned the color of wet cement. You're her, he stammered. The one they... I leaned in, my voice steady but low enough to make his breath hitch. Yes, I'm the one they targeted. And guess what, Martin? I'm still standing. And you, my friend, are about 2 hours away from being arrested unless you give me something useful. He swallowed so hard I could hear it click. They'll kill me if I talk, he muttered. They'll kill you anyway, I shot back. The minute you're no longer useful, you're done. But me, I'm offering you a lifeline. You help me shut this down and I'll make sure the authorities cut you a deal. Full immunity. His eyes darted around like he was calculating every possible escape route. But then he slumped forward, elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. There's a final shipment, he whispered. It's already in motion. Tonight, 2 locations. They're moving the last of the girls before relocating the entire network overseas. My blood ran cold. Where? He rattled off 2 addresses, one in Chicago's South Side, another near the Indiana border. I didn't waste time. I called Detective Ramirez directly. You want to take this whole thing down? Meet me at these locations, but bring everything you've got. No mistakes. That night, everything felt like it was stretched to the breaking point. The air was razor thin. The streets felt too quiet. And every second dragged like the final beat before a bomb goes off. At the Southside location, a condemned theater, I could already see movement inside when I arrived with the task force. Ramirez ordered the team to move in. The moment they breached the doors, chaos erupted. Men scattered like cockroaches under floodlights. Girls, some no older than 8, were huddled behind the rotted curtains. And in the center of it all? River, bleeding, desperate, but smiling. Too late, Janelle, he hissed as the officers slammed him to the ground. You think this ends with me? You have no idea how deep this goes. I wanted to scream at him, to ask why. But something told me he wasn't bluffing. Ramirez grabbed my shoulder. We found the second location, he said grimly. But there's something else. What? They found a ledger with financial transactions, offshore accounts, and names. His eyes locked on mine, and I could tell whatever he was about to say was going to change everything. The biggest donor to Melinda Grant's foundation? Ramirez took a shaky breath. It's your boss, Janelle. Kenneth Larson. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. Kenneth Larson, the man who ran the city's most respected charity organization. My boss for the last 5 years. The man who funded every community event I ever organized. My throat went dry. Ramirez continued, his voice grim. And according to this, he's not just a donor. He's the financial architect behind the entire trafficking ring. My mind flashed back to every conversation I'd ever had with Kenneth. His endless charity events, the way he always seemed too interested in our outreach programs, how he insisted on personally reviewing any case involving troubled young girls. It all made horrifying sense now. I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. And then, like clockwork, my phone lit up. Blocked number. I answered, my voice ice cold. Janelle. The familiar, syrupy voice drawled. I assume you figured it out by now? Kenneth? You really should have stayed in your lane. He sighed. But don't worry. I've already made arrangements. Some things can't be stopped. The line went dead. I turned to Ramirez, my chest heaving with raw fury. He's running, right now. Ramirez didn't hesitate. He barked orders to his team and we headed out. But just as I stepped outside, my phone vibrated again. One last message. A single image. A selfie of Kenneth Larson, standing on a private airstrip, with Melinda Grant right behind him. Her lips curled into that same cruel, knowing smile. And in the background, a private jet's engines were already roaring to life. We arrived at the airstrip just as the jet's engines roared to life. The wind from the turbines whipped my hair across my face, but I couldn't take my eyes off that plane. Inside that cabin, mere feet away, sat the two people who'd orchestrated every nightmare I'd lived through these past months. Kenneth Larson, Melinda Grant, the wolves who hid behind charity galas and smiling photo ops, while entire lives were destroyed in the shadows. Detective Ramirez was already yelling into his radio, calling for air traffic control to ground the plane. But deep down, I could feel it. They were about to get away, and for the first time in this entire hellish journey, I snapped. I took off running, through the security barricade, past the shouts from officers, barefoot, bloodied, breathless. I ran straight toward that jet like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. The plane started taxiing, wheels rumbling against the pavement. My heart felt like it might explode, but I didn't stop. As I neared the cockpit, I saw him. Kenneth, standing right by the window. His face as calm as ever, a drink in his hand, smirking like this was all a minor inconvenience. And right beside him, Melinda, still wearing that twisted, smug smile. But then, something changed. Melinda's expression faltered. She leaned toward Kenneth, her hands moving fast as she spoke. He turned sharply toward her, and for the first time, he looked afraid. That's when I realized they weren't running together. Melinda had cut a deal. She was turning him over to save herself. And just like that, the plane's wheels came to a screeching halt. Police cars swarmed the runway, lights flashing like a second sun rising over the tarmac. Officers rushed the jet as the pilot powered down the engines. I dropped to my knees right there on the runway, gasping for air, watching it all unfold. Minutes later, they led Kenneth Larson out of that plane in handcuffs. Melinda? She walked off calmly, escorted, not arrested. But before she disappeared into one of the black SUVs, she turned back and locked eyes with me. No smile this time, just cold calculation. I stood up, wiped the blood from my scraped palms, and walked right up to Kenneth as they loaded him into the back of the cruiser. He had the nerve to smirk one last time. "You think this ends with me?" He sneered. "There are others, Janelle. There are always others." I leaned in close, my voice low and steady. "Maybe. But today, it ends with you." And I meant it. The trial that followed was the biggest this city had ever seen. Kenneth Larson's entire criminal empire was exposed, offshore accounts seized, properties raided, his spotless reputation reduced to ash. He was sentenced to 175 years without the possibility of parole. Melinda Grant? Her deal didn't buy her freedom for long. With the mounting public outrage and new evidence uncovered through Kenneth's trial, she was eventually indicted for conspiracy, money laundering, and trafficking. She's now serving a 60-year sentence in federal prison. And River? He disappeared into the federal system, his name forgotten, exactly where he belongs. Do I still have nightmares? Sometimes. But now, when I wake up in a cold sweat, I remind myself, they're gone. And I'm still here. Stronger. Louder. And they will never hurt anyone again. Because when people like me stop staying quiet, monsters like them lose their power. You can break my heart, but you'll never break my fight. Life lesson. No matter how powerful the enemy seems, truth and persistence will always find the cracks in their walls. And when those walls fall, it's loud enough for the whole world to hear.